In today's video, we're going to be diving into things, taking a look here at our hurricane that we still have out there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Really, this is pretty late in the season to be dealing with this, so it is interesting, but thankfully it is expected to dissipate out there over open water. Very good news. We do have cooler air, even a massive Arctic blast perhaps, as some of these models are showing later on in the pattern that we're going to be discussing. This will bring with it more precipitation to the eastern states as we expect a big time surge in activity, especially when compared to the activity, or I should say lack thereof, that we've had recently. This could even spell some snowfall to some interesting areas that typically don't even see it for this time of year. So we're going to be diving into all of these things. Let's just take a look here at the afternoon and evening of today on Friday, November 8th. What we see here is by about 4 p.m., I guess we'll move it one forward. Let's look at 7 p.m. This is going to be a lot closer to when this video is coming out here. And what we see is some snowfall happening for New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, even bits of Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma there, seeing that. But this is relatively heavy, moderate to heavy snowfall out there for areas just to the east of the Rocky Mountain Range. Very interesting. And when we look at the jet stream, we see that it is really heading northward in a hurry here, just to the east of that snowfall. So we're seeing actually thunderstorms and showers here on the eastern end, while we see snowfall here on the western end. And this is fairly typical for this time of year, but that is a very vertical jet stream to say the least. We do have that hurricane down here. Again, it's expected to kind of meander and maybe head south and then overall dissipate here over open water. Again, just fantastic news. Let's take a look here at Saturday afternoon, tomorrow, from the time I am making this video. And a lot of this storminess that was located down here in the south central states has moved northward. We have a low pressure center, a very weak one, over perhaps Nebraska by this point tomorrow afternoon. We do see that there is, again, this kind of surging northward thunderstorm activity across some of the Midwest and deeper south here that could bring heavier showers, even thunderstorms, but relatively quiet outside of this. We do have some snowfall there for Wyoming and Colorado especially. And we still have this tropical cyclone, although it is weakened by this point, and we're basically going to be seeing it weaken day after day after day. As we reach towards Sunday afternoon on November 10th, this is what we're going to be looking at. We do see that a lot of this precipitation has moved eastward, and finally the eastern states are seeing precipitation overall here. The eastern third of the nation. This is an area that has been severely dry over the last month, 2 months, maybe even longer for some of these areas. It has been extremely dry throughout the fall season here. We do see some snow showers across the northern Rockies and even some rainfall showers here for the Pacific Northwest. But again, not the most active frame we've ever looked at here. That is still yet to come. Monday here on November 11th, we see a lot of things transpiring and activity is overall surging by this point. We do see snowfall for the Cascades, maybe even the northern Sierra Nevada mountains, and then also for the northern Rockies. Rainfall will persist for areas, in lower elevation, maybe even coastal areas there. And it's interesting, we have these showers still around for the southeast, so again, much needed for these areas. We actually have a pretty decent low here south of that Hudson Bay, and what we're seeing is perhaps a cold front that wants to develop to the south here. But with the kind of surge of this storm in the west that's bringing with it colder air, I don't know if this is going to be able to bring a major trough here this time around. And really, we don't see that occur. It tries to get going, but this low just moves out. And we overall see just too much cold air directed at the west to really bring any towards the east. And actually, we end up getting quite the opposite here. Something like this as far as the jet stream. So a very, very soft ridge over the east, a little bit drier again. And then some snow and cold for the northwest corner of the nation. But again, it's a relatively cold, soft trough there. It's not the deepest trough in the world by any means. We do see, thankfully, our tropical cyclone has severely lost intensity. We've seen this just happen rapidly, and it's down to 1,006. This is a very weak storm by this point. We do see a more intense storm system up here, way up in central Canada. This one could bring with it a cold front at some point and finally pull this cold air towards the east. So we'll have to see if this can be the one that pulls it off. Again, a warm front would likely develop to the east there as well. Let's see what happens. This is by Wednesday afternoon, and yes, I think this is the one to do that. We do see some kind of broad low pressure around in these areas. So overall, we have the lowest pressure here, some lower pressure here, but really, I mean, we see this kind of cold front developing here overall, and it is pulling this cold air into the upper Midwest and likely going to be heading towards overall the eastern states in general. Again, oftentimes ahead of these, we do see a quick surge of warm air up the East Coast out ahead of it. Very, very common stuff. And overall, we are dealing with a bit of a ridge for the West. So that is obviously aiding in just creating this imbalance that brings the cold air eastward. Again, we do have a stronger storm system moving on shore to the northwest once more. 999 there near the coast of Washington. This is bringing snowfall to these mountainous areas, rainfall in the lower elevation areas. And yeah, it could be a nasty time out there. By the time we reach Thursday here on November 14th, we see our decent low here south of the Hudson Bay. We do have a secondary low offshore nearby Long Island. And overall, we're seeing a frontal boundary set up here. Very intense cold air diving quickly into the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, even northeast here. Enough so that we actually see some snowfall for the Catskills and Adirondack Mountains there of New York. So let's keep going. Take this towards, well, kind of into Friday. This is 1 a.m. on Friday the 15th. And we actually do get a pretty decent New England snowstorm out of this. This secondary low quickly becomes the primary low, a very intense one there over southern New England. This would be a what we call Miller B nor'easter. Real quickly, a Miller B nor'easter basically starts out halfway up the East Coast. A Miller A would be up the entire East Coast. So that is the difference here. So A, Miller A, almost looks like Miller H there. Let's do that. And then we get that Miller B here with this northern route. That is the difference between our two major types of nor'easters. We do see pretty much everything in between as well being possible, but that's the two families of types of nor'easters. This is a pretty realistic November storm, I would say. You know, the Berkshires, the Green Mountains, White Mountains getting some pretty heavy snowfall. That does happen in November, so I'm not going to necessarily write this one off, especially it's within 10 days. We'll have to watch what happens with this. Obviously, it takes a lot for this to happen, but it is certainly possible. That nor'easter wants to just meander along the coast through the day on Friday and slowly move kind of upward, northward. There we do see some snowfall lingering through the day as well. This is by 4 p.m. on Friday the 15th. We do also see some more precipitation for the northwest once again. Snowfall in the mountains, rainfall elsewhere. We still see cooler air really funneled into the east here. An area like this. We do see some of these southern areas kind of dodge it though in this case. Let's take this towards Saturday. And now some interesting things are happening. This nor'easter's finally kind of moving up and out. We do see a very, very strong low wanting to develop nearby Kansas, 988 here. We do see snowfall around for the Rockies and northern plains here. And then we see showers and thunderstorms extending to the east of it. But really, this is bringing with it deep Arctic air along the west, and this is developing a bit of a ridge for the east here. Again, a very soft one, but it is there nevertheless. Here's by Sunday, though, and it's pretty evident what we're going to see happen. This low is either going to transfer or move up near the Great Lakes, maybe even further northward than that, develop a cold front underneath it, and it is going to drag this cold air into the east. That is the look that we're seeing shape up. Again, the key ingredient here is this warm air really trending in for the west coast again. This again creates that imbalance that brings that cold air towards the east. Also, look, again, we get that quick surge of warm air right ahead of it. So sometimes you just see this really quick warm up, pretty intense sometimes as well, just before we cool down quite significantly. So keep that in mind. Here is by the time we reach Monday. And again, that low is pretty much moved up over the Great Lakes, as I mentioned. We do see a secondary low down here for Louisiana. We will be watching for severe weather underneath all of this. We have some dry, cold air moving into very humid and warm areas. This can bring, wintertime or late fall time, severe weather, and even tornado events. And this is the area that we would typically watch for these out-of-season tornado events. So we will be watching this closely. I mentioned this yesterday, but definitely something to pay attention to. We do have a strong tropical cyclone nearby Cuba. I'm taking that with a grain of salt because it is, the mid to late portion of November. Typically, we're really slowed down in the tropics department by that point, but we do consider everything as a possibility here on the channel, so we will track it. We do see some precipitation, again, for you guessed it, the northwest. Snowfall in the mountains, rainfall elsewhere. They're getting their fair share, and probably more than their fair share. We do see this tropical cyclone hit Florida, unfortunately, and then move up the East Coast. I mean, this is crazy stuff we're seeing here. Tons of precipitation for the southeast there. And we actually somehow managed to get a nor'easter and a mid-Atlantic snowstorm here, just like yesterday's model run. Again, definitely take this with a grain of salt. This is highly unusual for the November timeframe. And I want you guys to consider that this is probably not going to happen, almost definitely. So we are watching this. It is fun to look at, but it is almost certain that that will not happen that way. What is possible is this unseasonable warm up out west. We do see these from time to time where we get this really sudden surge of warm air along the west. A really charged up Arctic look here across south central Canada and the north central United States, and it looks primed to move into the eastern states. So let's look at Thursday afternoon and look at this. Huge positive P&A pattern, massive Arctic blast into the east here. And we even see snow showers throughout these areas. This is a little bit more realistic than obviously seeing a nor'easter major snowstorm for the mid-Atlantic. That's a little bit untypical for the time of year, but this is just a sharp cool down. We see this last into Friday as well, where we get a low nearby New England. We get some snowfall happening. This is tons of lake effect snowfall, and then also a pretty major northeast snowstorm and southeast Canada snowstorm. Again, is it the most likely thing in the world? Probably not, but it is something that happens, and I'm not going to write it off. We do see very intense cold air here, and look, it's very impressive. This is very inverted, this trough. We see something along these lines, and this is probably why we see this low move way offshore and then want to come back inland. It's just following that jet stream, so a very long curvature there, and we just get lots of wintry weather here across that corridor. Very interesting. And we see that kind of continue to bring cold air. It becomes a little bit less intense, but we still see snowfall and cold air in the east here. And we have another low developing over Kansas, which from this point would likely move northward, bring a cold front underneath, and bring another Arctic blast like we see shaping up here. We already see warm air trending back in for the west coast by this point. So this model wants to repetitively bring some pretty major cold air into the east. If this is the case, we could really finish off November in a huge way. We see lots of snowfall, by the way, here for the Plains and Rockies. That is absolutely crazy, and this is a very strong low over Kansas. I want to backtrack to the peak of this look here, and I want to move to the not northern hemisphere. That's a little crazy. Right here. Actually, let's see if we can get a better look. We do just get a tremendous amount of blocking to support this. You notice we don't have anything crazy as far as a trough in this area. We have a lot of high pressure, actually. And what this does is it creates just enough blocking, that high pressure, and overall a little bit of a ridge look. We get kind of this with the jet stream overall if we look at the entire northern hemisphere. Something like this. There's another trough here just offshore of Europe there. We get one over the east of the United States, which is the most intense. And we have another one offshore of the west coast of the United States. We even have one there nearby Alaska and maybe even eastern Russia. So when you have this many troughs, we actually will look at the northern hemisphere here. I think this is a good opportunity to show you guys something cool. We get so many troughs here, so I want to just count them out kind of. So we get a little mini ridge here, trough, ridge, trough, ridge, trough, ridge, trough again. A little bit of a flatter jet stream out there on the other side of the world. But when you have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 troughs along the entire northern hemisphere, this is going to be progressing really fast and revolving very quickly around the globe. When you have just a couple of troughs, let's say 1 or 2 really big ones, or maybe even 3, you see it move much slower. But when we get a lot like this, it moves much quicker as a general rule of thumb. So that is something to really pay attention to. These might be in and out in a hurry if it looks this way with this many around, again, the northern hemisphere. So just a little bit of a lesson there and a kind of like a rule of thumb. As we take a look at the total precipitation, the Northwest just gets a ton here. We're looking at maybe over a foot of precipitation, liquid precipitation there for areas of Washington and British Columbia. They get a ton of precipitation through the year, but that is even a lot for them. And we get really decent amounts for most of the eastern half of the nation here, especially if you're in this far east area. Looking very good there. And when we look at the anomalies, it kind of reflects that. Again, far above average for the Pacific Northwest. here. Some pretty decently above normal amounts throughout the plains. And then this is another great area along the east where we're getting more and more and more. The driest area is going to be the southwest here, where we frequently have above normal temperatures and drier conditions. Even some high pressure in these areas could be present at times. So that is the overall look as far as precipitation is concerned. The snowfall here, we see a ton for the northwest. And then the Sierra Nevada and Rockies get their fair share. We also see some through the northern plains and upper Midwest. We get some lake effect snow in there as well. And then we even get a couple of snow systems up here in New England and the rest of the Northeast. This isn't the most unrealistic look I've ever seen in the world. I think the more far-fetched areas is going to be this southern corridor in here, like Pennsylvania, some of West Virginia outside of the mountains, especially, you know, northern Virginia here. The non-mountainous areas in this blob that I just drew is the more far-fetched area, to say the least, I guess. In this, we do get a lot of lake effect action, and that would occur likely if we saw a brutal cold air mass come through. So overall, an interesting look. Here's the overall temperatures, and again, we're warmer in the east here overall for definitely a few days. We do have one in the northeast, a bit of a cool down here tomorrow, Saturday, into Sunday a bit, and then we warm right back up. But we get another one for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday there for the northeast, and then we get a more of a full eastern slight cool down here around the Thursday, Friday, Saturday time frame. We do get that intense, very sudden warm up right before we get a more major cool down here in the east. So look at this, brutally cold here around the 19th, 20th, 21st. Look at that. That is severely below normal temperatures here. In the greens, we're looking at 10 to 15 degrees below normal. And then some of these kind of purplish blues in here is 15 to 25 degrees below normal. So a very, very intense cool down here, potentially in the medium to long range. Your tropics, we still have Hurricane Raphael out there in the middle of the Gulf. But again, expected to break up, thankfully. And then we have lowered from a 30% chance 2 days ago, 20% chance yesterday, now down to a 10% chance of development here in the Bahamas area over the next 48 hours and 7 days. So looking highly unlikely that we see this one develop at any point. Let's take a look at Raphael, the actual cone forecast here. And again, expected to kind of maintain hurricane status, become a tropical storm, stall out, and then almost take a deep dive straight to the south before it becomes kind of a post-tropical cyclone at tropical depression intensity. So it is a weakening storm over time. And by early to midweek next week, this should be all said and done, thankfully. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe as we do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.